Good evening, Miss Imelda. Good evening, everyone. We are from Group A, consists of I am Irsya Syahraini, Amelia Nastari, Dinda Dwi, Lisa Nurmanidar Lubis, and Sarah Anjani. Today, we are going to present about the Renaissance period. The first material will be explained by Amelia Nastari, and the first material is about the history of Renaissance period.
The history of Renaissance period. The Renaissance was a fervent period of European cultural, artistic, political, and economic rebirth following the Middle Age, generally described as taking place from the 14th century to the 17th century. The Renaissance promoted the rediscovery of classical philosophy, literature, and art. Some of the greatest thinkers, authors, statesmen, scientists, and artists in human history thrived during this era, while global exploration opened up new lands and cultures to European commerce. The Renaissance is credited with bridging the gap between the Middle Age and modern-day civilization. Renaissance drama. Renaissance history plays such as Shakespeare's 1064 until 1016, Richard II 1097, or Henry IV 1097 adapt English history for stage performance. In many cases, the author chose a historical pretext in order to comment on contemporary socio-political misery while minimizing the risk of censorship. William Shakespeare, 1064 until 1016, and Christopher Marlowe, 1064 until 1093, revived and developed classical forms of drama such as tragedy and comedy, and were among the first to reflect on different dramatic genres. Renaissance poetry. Renaissance poetry includes a variety of artistic writing complete during the Renaissance in Europe. This period, which lasted from the 14th century to the start of the 17th century, was characterized by a focus on the arts. Poetry from the Renaissance could be written about almost any topic, but generally focused on a few select topics that were of high interest at the time. Court poets were also a major factor during the Renaissance. Kings and queens hired poets to tell their own family history or to entertain the court with songs and poems. This led to many poems about politics, as well as how does politics influence the human condition. Poetry from this period also incorporate topics ranging from the Christianity to the classical antiquity.
Renaissance prose. Renaissance prose is one whose speech took place by mere and logical association during the Renaissance, that is, between the 15th and 16th centuries in Europe. This was a time of palpable flourishing and brilliance in all forms of artistic and intellectual expression, diametrically opposite to the obscurantism of the preceding centuries. Didactic prose, dialogues, and colloquia talk regarding various issues between two or more individuals who seek to persuade others about the prevalence of their point of view. Historiographics. The literary essence of Renaissance prose made possible to the evolution of written words towards the expression of a high aesthetic level. In this way, narrative forms such as historiography began to appear, in which there was room for fictional passage or thoughts or dialogues, for example. Aesthetic and mystical. The Portal of ABC 2005 defines asceticism as the purifying process of the soul in which the will of the believer predominates to approach perfection and enlightening. In the Renaissance literary expression, the ascetic grouped the texts of religious authors who captured their trances, reflections, and expiatory experiences. Saint Teresa of Jesus, 15 and 15 to 15 and 82. She was a consecrated Carmelite nun born under the name of Teresa Sanchez de Cepeda Davila Ahumada. Unlike Saint John of the Cross, whose poems are mainly known, much of the literary legacy left by the nun was written in prose. Among his best-known works are Life of Mother Teresa of Jesus, Path of Perfection, The Inner Castle Abodes, and Foundations.
Note historians corresponding to the Renaissance period. Antonio de Nebrija, 1444 to 1522. Juan Janes de Sepulveda, 1490 to 1573. Pedro Mexia, 1497 to 1550. Fictional prose and major Renaissance narrative forms. Fantastic or idealistic novel. They are novels whose main character is a hero capable of overcoming and triumphing in the face of any circumstance or adversity. In general, the events take place in a fictional location and the setting are almost always idealized. Accordingly, the thread of events leads inexorably to a happy conclusion regardless of the likelihood of outcome.
Types of fantasy novel. Chivalric novel. The stories of chivalry, they have their genesis in two great cycles coming from France, the Arthurians and the Carolinians, relating to the exploits of the knight of King Arthur and Charlemagne, respectively. Both currents greatly influenced the Spanish prose writers of the 14th century, whose maximum expression is condensed in the Amadis of Gaul, compiled by Garcia Rogers de Montalvo. Characteristic chivalric novel. The first one is Exhibition of Evil as real historical accounts, despite being invented. The second one, The Incredible Deeds of the Knights, appear narrated by a supposed historian who expresses himself in an exotic language. And the third class, the author of the work introduced himself as a simple translator. Adventure novel Byzantine. They are novels whose development revolves around a deed related to some exodus, mission, or crusade, interspersed with a love motif with a generally happy ending. In them, the event and history of each character are gradually revealed. Consequently, they were texts aimed at educate people, capable of scrutinizing a plot that is only decipherable at the end.
Okay, next is representative Byzantine novels. Story of the loves of Clario and Florici and the labors of the unfortunate IC, 1552 by Alonso Nunes de Reynoso, considered the first adventure novel in Spain, although academics indicate that it is an emulation of the love of Lucipe and Cleopatra by Tecchio. Adventure Jungle, 1565 by Geronimo de Contres, The Pilgrim in His Homeland, 1604 by Lope de Vega, Story of Hipólito and Amnita, 1627 by Francisco de Quintana. Pastoral novel. They are novels in which the theme is the love of the shepherds towards the shepherdess and idyllic landscape where they are. On some occasions, the protagonists manage to conquer the object of their affections. In others, they lose everything in a tragic way, or for reasons that they may be supernatural. The Galatea, 1585, by Miguel de Cervantes, is an emblematic work of his subgenre. Representative pastoral novel, The 10 Books of Fortune of Love, 1573, by Antonio de Lombroso. Names of Shepherds of Henry's, 1587, by Bernardo González de Bobadilla. The Arcadia, 1588, by Lope de Vega. Moorish novel are those in which the protagonist is Moor with a chivalrous and courteous dispositions. His character of Islamic origin has a bearing quite similar to that of border romance. Therefore, he is no longer perceived as an enemy. Rather, the Muslim appears framed in a colorful environment and endowed with admirable morality. Last but not least, realistic novel. Contrary to fantasy novel, realistic novel, they have an anti-hero type protagonist and their development rarely leads to a happy conclusion. Likewise, the location, the dialogues, the language, and the thread of events are totally plausible. All this in accordance with the most important intention for the author, expose the reality of that historical moment. That's all from Group 8. Thank you for your attention.
That's all from Group A about the Renaissance period. I hope you guys can understand this material and thank you for your attention.